Hey friends, it's Lara, your camp counselor today, and I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about aquatic plants. So let's have a look here. This is hydrilla. It's known as the world's worst water weed. Here, let's pick a little bit up. All right. It's got these toothed leaves and whorled leaves. I think you learned about that in your morphology lab. So have a look. It's a submersed plant, but you can see it's growing to the top of this water. So it roots in the ground and then grows all the way, fills the water column. All right, I'll be back. Here's hydrilla again. So hydrilla can do a lot of things to a body of water. But one of the things it does is, like invasive species tend to do, creates a monoculture. And so what that means is it grows so fast and so well and outcompetes other native plants that it has a tendency to become the dominant plant in a system. So once hydrilla sets in, it's able to take over and become one of the only plant species in the water body. Not the only, but one of the only. It does do a good job of cleaning the water. It uptakes a lot of nutrients because it grows so fast. But it can also use up a lot of dissolved oxygen in the nighttime. And so it can crash dissolve oxygen levels, making it difficult to impossible for other plants and other fish to survive. This beautiful grass is called torpedo grass. It's an emergent grass. Has kind of a bluish hue when you look at it from afar. And it takes over. All right. We got a couple things here. We have dollarweed, which is not an invasive plant, it's a native plant. We've got parrot's feather right here. All right. There's another one, and you maybe recognize this from Miss Laura's yard. This is wild taro. So interesting that Miss Laura had it growing in her yard, and here it's in this wetland. Well, it's a common plant used in people's yards, but it's much like the torpedo grass is transitional. This is too. It can grow in aquatic environments and also in upland environments and anywhere in between. You see why we call it a beautiful invader. Look at those gorgeous leaves. All right, this is Peruvian primrose. I just want to show you. This was a popular landscaping plant. It's everywhere. So this is really the only, pretty much the only species you see, which is precisely the problem, right? It forms a dense monoculture. All right. Look at all this taro. And there's one other species dominant in this little cypress dome, cypress swamp, right? So a swamp has trees. That's one of the things that makes it a swamp. Makes it different than a marsh, which is dominated by grass. But see this other really beautiful plant with the purple flowers and the fun spiky leaves. This is called Mexican petunia. It's also a really common landscaping plant. And the thing with this plant is, like the taro and the torpedo grass, it can thrive in upland and aquatic environments equally as well. This is another one that is really aggressive, grows really fast, and tends to take over. Mexican petunia and taro. So the problem here, if we look out, this, what is now a cypress forest, will be unable to, the seedlings of the cypress trees won't be able to regenerate in this area, right? Because they're having to compete with all of this wild taro and Mexican petunia. And so ultimately, this will change the structure of the whole forest. So now it's a cypress dome, but once these trees are old and die, there won't be as many new cypress trees able to take root. So eventually this might turn into a marsh that's dominated by invasive plants like wild taro and Mexican petunia, and likely some other plants. So the common theme here is that these plants were and are used as ornamental plants, as landscaping plants. And so what makes them good in our yards, they are easy to grow, they grow fast, they have really pretty flowers, or they have nice foliage. Also makes them really terrible when they escape from our yards and make their way into natural areas. All right. I see a bunch of taro. And also Peruvian primrose and Mexican petunia. All right, well, this is technically an upland plant, but I just want to show you something here. So this is Caesar's weed. The leaves are pubescent, meaning they're hairy, Look at these seeds. Look at those burrs. All right, so we walk past, and the burrs get stuck on everything. Animal fur, our clothes, our hair. Right, so this is how Caesar's weed is so successful. It produces these really sticky burrs. It's one of the ways it's so successful. Produces many, many seeds, which is another common characteristic of invasive plants. They produce lots of seeds, often, and are efficient at dispersing their seeds. It's pretty characteristic. So this is full of Caesar weed over here. All right, I see another one. This one is alligator weed. It has these small white papery flowers. All right, so the interesting about the alligator weed is that we successfully released a biological control that helps to control this weed. It's called the alligator weed flea beetle. Imagine that. It doesn't completely kill the plant, but it stresses it out, right? And so that's another characteristic of invasive plants. What makes them capable of becoming invasive is that they don't have predators here, right? They've been moved to a new location by humans, and they're predators that normally, the organisms that normally keep their populations in check aren't here. So biological controls are organisms that we find in the plant's native range. So we went back to where alligator weed is from and found the beetle that stresses it out and eats it, and did a lot of research on it for years and years and years, and then released it. So here's a good example of what the alligator weed flea beetle does to the alligator weed. So you see it just munches on the leaves a bit. Makes them lacy, and they're not able to photosynthesize if their leaves are full of holes, right? So this alligator weed flea beetle has done a pretty good job of keeping alligator weed under control for the most part. All right, what do we think we call this one? Looks to me like it's dominated by grasses and other low-growing vegetation. I do see a random palm tree in the middle, but this seems a little marshy.